don't know if you've come across the writer Louise Perry, but she recently wrote an article that was about modernity and its this technological modernity and its fate. And effectively, she was linking it to the declining demographics that you see across the West, as shown by the very low fertility rate, and that fertility rate is decreasing across every group of people as they go along that same path. And she was saying modernity is showing that perhaps it can't reproduce itself. And there were other things she was linking to it. Is it just that nature doesn't want to live this way? That's a totally separate question. But within all of this, I suppose she then says, perhaps our future is much like our past. It will be extended families living together in a more rooted place. And it made me think of a question, Alan, which is, if culturally, for all of this time, that at least some of the peoples that inhabit this island, I appreciate, as we've mentioned, there are many different other peoples living here now, but if those peoples who've been here since the times we've been talking about have this long-running cultural trait, which is individualistic, nuclear family, moving around, it's not actually that there was even really a rooted experience of a family through the generations, as you've seen through the land transfers, is, do we go back to a point that actually never really existed? So if modernity might be forcing us more to a rooted existence, bigger extended families, does culture win out against these pressures in the end? Does it hold up, or is it the world that in the end will end up changing the way we are?
Yeah, two separate things I'd like to mention there. One is modernity. He used the word. Most people don't know what modernity means, or rather, I think they don't know what modernity means in my sense. Most people, like this lady in Louise, seem to equate it with surface phenomena, technology. So that's part of the reason why people think the modern world began with the Industrial Revolution, because you get a change in the technologies, and that is modernity. So if you ask most people, what is it to be modern? They'd say, well, to drive a car and to have an iPhone and have, most young people, most intelligent people will associate modernity with the physical world. We've created science and technology, really. That's obviously part of it, but it's only a small part of it. At a much deeper level, my definition of modernity, and I've written about 6 books about which have the title modern in it, in them, the riddle of the modern world, the making of the modern world, the invention of the modern world, and so on. In all of them, I define within the meaning of modern, and it's taken from the great social thinkers, which is that modernity consists of separating out your life. So human beings have 4 great drives: towards wealth, and we call that economics; towards social warmth, and we call that society; towards power, and we call that politics; and towards striving for meaning and understanding, and we call that ideology. Those are the 4. In most civilizations, in simple societies, they're all together, so a tribal people. In peasantries, they split into 2 pairs. Politics and religion are together, and society and economy, as I've explained, is together. What modernity does is the final splitting apart. So you can pursue politics without worrying about religion or economics or your family. My uncle was a member of Parliament, and I know that if I'd asked him to do things privately on my behalf, he would have said, sorry, Alan, you're my nephew, but it's nothing to do with me, etc. And if his local priest had told him what to do, he wouldn't have done it necessarily. So this is modernity. Now, it's a fiction, because, of course, these things are influencing each other, and we often call that corruption, nepotism, helping your nephew. But it's a necessary fiction for freedom, because if you want to be operating freely in any of these fields, then you need to keep up the fiction that they are separate and inseparable. This is what England achieved in the medieval period, to a large extent. Separation of God, the market, your family, and the king. They're separate things. And we've maintained it, and it's very deeply ingrained. And I personally, in answer to your question, think it will continue. Many groups in England don't, in much of their lives, subscribe to it. For example, if you're a Muslim or a Hindu or a Jew or whatever, you don't subscribe to the separation, say, between family and religion. You want to marry off your daughter and so on and so on. But England developed through its empire a tolerant system whereby you would allow a good deal of personal mixing of fields as long as it doesn't impinge on the general playing field on which people operate. So as long as you obey the laws, you pay your taxes, don't go around killing people, then what you eat, what you dress, wear, what you believe is up to you. So this allows a good deal of multicultural tolerance, which you don't find in the same way in many continental countries. So I think it will vary and it'll change and so on, but I don't think we will live in multi-generational peasant-type families. I mean, there are statistics showing that many more children are staying at home for much longer. But that has to be looked at rather carefully, because when I was studying this leaving home syndrome, I was also doing a study of my grandchildren. We lived down the road and I was filming them and watching them grow up and studying them in a way I couldn't with my own children. I saw that though they lived at home, stayed at home and went to school locally till they were 18, they'd basically made this separation when they were 11 or 12. In other words, their room had a notice on it, don't come out in it without my permission. They had their own pocket money and accounts. They decided what their interests were. And they built up a kind of understanding with their parents about their private space. And their parents were, and they were very soon aware that their most important people in their lives were their friends at school, rather than their parents. So they broke away. They didn't have to leave home to break away. And I suspect that if you look at many young people living at home, they're living in a bedsit, which might be in someone else's, but now they don't have to pay the rent. So they don't necessarily eat together and so on. So I think it is compatible with statistics showing much more co-residential activities. And even, bank of mum and dad or bank of nanny and grandpa is a bank. It's something you borrow money from. But they've lent you the money. They don't have to lend you the money. They can ask for it back. You can pay it back. So this very contractual relationships which you develop early on with your own family, I think is what will happen. And looking at it in reverse, I'm doing a lot of study of China. And the Chinese problem is the reverse. Are they going to lose their traditional, not peasant, but close familistic system? And I've been talking to a lot of young Chinese who say it's changed greatly, but it hasn't gone, and it won't go. They still feel deeply bound up with their parents, with their siblings, with their wider relatives. They would still, if their cousin had a son who wanted to go to America, they'd still chip in with part of their salary to pay for them. If their parents are ill, they'll fly from England and go and look after them. It's very different, and it's remained different. And I think given the huge change that's occurred in the last 25 years, it's gone about as far as it will go.